So last week, we were talking about change, and I said that we would continue on to talk about change, and we are going to do that this week, and we're going to talk about it next week, because God just has us in a season right now of this, and we're going to walk this out a little bit more and find out what the Lord's saying to us in this season about change. Which leads me to this. Now, a big change happened in our family last September when Stella came to live with us. She didn't just come to live with us, we adopted her. She's going to stay there probably, for a good long while. But what you're looking at here is Stella's favorite food. As it sits, white rice, no seasoning, and she would prefer about that quantity of white rice if she were given the choice. So when we came back, she was introduced to the rude awakening that we actually eat more than rice in this culture. In fact, at our house, we don't have rice that much. So Stella had to learn that her palate needed to be expanded a little bit, that she was going to have to change to adapt to be a part of our family. And so one night, we found out as we were easing into life with her that another thing that she would eat is chicken. Now, not any chicken. That's way too broad of a category. Fried chicken, out. Forget it. No way. Baked chicken, no seasoning, that'd be about right. Especially at this stage in life, that's what Stella was up for. And so we had dinner that night, and we fixed her exactly what I said, some baked chicken, and we had some other things with it, and she sat there at dinner, and even though she didn't have much language, she had all the expression in the world when she stared at that bowl, stared at that plate of chicken, and just looked back like, this isn't rice. This is not what I signed up for. I need the rice. This is something else. So we had our meal, and I would encourage her throughout the meal, Stella, you need to go ahead and eat your chicken. She knew what that meant. And she would continue to just look at me and look at the chicken, and there it would sit. So the end of the meal came. Yes?
Can I just add that there were 3 other people beside you telling her to eat, and 2 of them kept saying, Stella, you really want to eat that chicken. Dad really wants you to eat that chicken.
She was greatly encouraged to eat the chicken because the other 2 knew what was to come if they weren't to eat the chicken. And so dinner ended, and the girls finished their dinner, took their plates to the sink, and went on. Connie finished dinner, took her plate to the sink, went on. I finished dinner, took my plate to the sink, and went on. But there sat Stella at the table. Plate of chicken. Not very much. And we're not talking a lot of chicken. We're talking like, if you took a chicken strip and cut it into 2 or 3 pieces and then cut that in half, that's about what she had. Okay, not much. We're not shoving, a chicken breast down her throat or anything. So everybody gets up and her eyes get real big, and I said, you need to eat. I said, this is what we're having for dinner. And I walked away, and tears started streaming down her cheek. And so left her there for about 5 minutes, came back, tears still streaming down her cheek, chicken still sitting on the plate. I said, guess what? I said, we've told you to eat your chicken. I said, because you didn't eat your chicken, you're going to be disciplined. It's not what I said, but for our setting here today, that's what we're going to say. You're going to be disciplined. And so I took Stella and disciplined her. She wasn't very happy about that. Sat her back down the table. I said, you need to go ahead and eat your chicken. I walked off. Came back about 5 minutes later. Tears are still streaming down her face. Chicken still sitting on the plate. We got one of those in our house. Good. Well, she fits right in. So encouraged her again. Sorry, you didn't eat your chicken. So guess what? You're going to be disciplined again. So she was disciplined again. And this time she found it to be a good idea to eat her chicken. And she ate it in about 30 seconds, and it was gone. And the next meal, we had something, and she looked at me and she said, Daddy, I eat. So in this case, it took a little bit for Stella to embrace some change. She kind of had to go the long way around to get there. But, you know, I use that story to lead into what we're talking about tonight, because in change, God can be our greatest asset, or God can be our greatest detriment. But it depends on us. So begin to consider what role God is in change in your life. We're going to be talking about this throughout the night. Because change can become easy. It's not always easier for people. Last week we talked about that I like change. Anybody else here really like change? Okay, a couple other people.
Dusty does.
Dusty does. Dusty's not here. You're raising her hand in proxy. That's great. So yeah, a few people like change. I would say the vast majority of people are not people who love change. And so, but it can become a little easier. And we're going to look at some verses here about the Lord. Last week we talked about change and the fact that the Lord doesn't change. We're going to look at some different aspects of that tonight. So here we're going to start out in Psalms. Psalm 18:2. It says, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold." So what word is equated here with the Lord a couple of times? Rock, exactly. And we hear that a lot. We sing those words a lot. That's a very common correlation that we see here, that the Lord is our rock. And that's absolutely true. But we're going to dig in a little deeper and looking at the idea of what a rock is and different types of rocks. And so here's the first type of rock that we're going to look at tonight. And it's in 1 Peter 2, 5 and 6. "You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house for a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For this is contained in Scripture. Behold, I lay in Zion a choice stone, a precious cornerstone, and he who believes in him will not be disappointed." So we can see here, this bottom section here in verse 6 actually comes from Isaiah 28. This is pre-Jesus, okay? This is way pre-Jesus at this point. But that's exactly what Isaiah is pointing to here. He's saying, "Behold, I lay in Zion a choice stone." He's talking about Jesus, "a precious cornerstone. And he who believes in him," Jesus, "will not be disappointed." So then I thought, well, okay, cornerstone. I've heard the word. Let's find out what a cornerstone is. So I started looking at cornerstones, and you can see here in the picture a couple of examples, one in a drawing sense and another one in a literal sense down below. Now listen to this. The cornerstone concept was derived from the first stone set in the construction of a masonry foundation. So when they built bricks, like masons do stones, like you see here, the cornerstone was the first one that was set. It's important since all other stones will be set in reference to that stone, thus determining the position of the entire structure. I'm going to read that again so you can think about how that might relate to what we're talking about. It's important since all other stones will be in reference to this stone, thus determining the position of the entire structure. So if Christ is the cornerstone, he's the first stone set. It's said that we are living stones being built up. So like in that top picture, we'd be like all the other stones. But if we're not aligned in reference to the cornerstone, what's going to happen to the structure? I mean, yeah, it may fall, it may be off. I mean, you build it up and it's crooked. I mean, look what they did Leaning Tower of Pisa. They screwed that thing up big time. So, I'm not sure it was a cornerstone issue. Nobody consulted me, but here we can see the importance of a cornerstone and what that really means. Now we're going to go on in 1 Peter here, and we're going to look at another example of a stone. So verses 7 and 8 here. This precious stone then is for you who believe. But for those who disbelieve, the stone which the builders rejected, this became the very cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. So for those who believe, if we go back a slide, please. For those who believe, it's a cornerstone. But for those who disbelieve, it's a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. So a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. And now the thing about this is, stone of stumbling, still talking about Jesus. Stone of stumbling is still Christ, just like he's the cornerstone. But for those who, it says, disbelieve here, it becomes a stone of stumbling or a rock of offense. So Jesus can actually be both at the exact same time. Either a stone of stumbling or a cornerstone. Now this is of course in reference to people who believe in Christ, Christians, those who wouldn't believe, those who are non-Christians. If you look back in those passages though, when it's talking to Israel, this is also for believers. It's very possible that in our lives there are times when Jesus can be a cornerstone, and there are times when Jesus can be a stone of stumbling in our lives. And so we're going to examine that a little further through a story that is kind of familiar, and I'm going to make you do a little work here. You're familiar, I think, with Jonah. Anybody heard the story of Jonah? Jonah, okay. Got swallowed by big fish. Some people say a whale. Let me give you a little background on Jonah here. So we'll go to the next slide. And let's go to the slide after that just for fun. There we go. We'll go back to that other one in just a second. So Jonah was a prophet. So a prophet in the Old Testament was somebody who heard the word of the Lord and spoke it, and it was exactly God's words. I mean, it was 100%, no error. It was right or it was wrong. I mean, they spoke the word of the Lord. And so Jonah was a prophet. And he prophesied that during this time, he lived during both of these times, that the borders of Israel would be expanded. Now, the picture on the left that you see here, the little orange part is Israel. But after he prophesied that during the days of Jeroboam II, which is a king, look at how much bigger the orange part got. It got a lot bigger. So God spoke that, and that's what happened. I mean, Israel grew. Their borders expanded. So if you've read any of the Old Testament, it's like they accomplished this through wars and battles and taking things in the favor of the Lord. I mean, this really expanded under the leadership of this king. So as a result, what do you think the people thought of Jonah, since this happened?
They thought of him as like a fortune teller or something?
No, not necessarily that. But what was their opinion of him? Do you think they liked him? Do you think, he's not so great?
They liked him.
Yeah, he's pretty popular because, wow, our land expanded, and this is a good guy. In fact, he became pretty popular. You wouldn't think of we don't think of that. Prophets were popular, but it's like, hey, something good worked out. This guy's pretty cool. I'm going to hang out with him. Maybe he'll say some more prophecy stuff, and more good things will happen. This is somebody I want to align myself up with. So even though Jonah's a prophet, he probably maybe got a little puffed up by that. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's the Lord. Of course it's the Lord. But still, he did speak to me. So had to be pretty excited about that. Now, another thing that was happening during that time, on the picture on the right, is it says the empire of Assyria. So the Assyrian Empire up here in the pink, you don't even see it over here on the left. But guess what? That place is growing big time on the time of the right. And this is where some possible conflict could take place. Now, Assyria was a place that was pretty ruthless. Here's what they did. When they captured noble people, they would do this. They would fillet them, and they would drape their skins over piles of corpses. That's what they would do to the noble people. Now, just for the soldiers and things, they would take them and they would cut off their noses and they would cut off their ears, and then they'd poke their eyes out. So, real friendly bunch of people you want to hang out with. And then after that, then they'd cut off their heads and they'd take the heads, they'd put them on sticks around the cities that they captured. So these guys meant business. There were some pretty bad dudes. If you think of gang warfare, they were pretty bad guys. But for those they kept alive, what they did is they would pierce their lips with fish hooks, but they'd keep the line on them, and they'd lead them around by this line. Can you imagine being led around by your lip, having it ripped out? That wouldn't be a lot of fun. So they led them back to a place called Nineveh, which is in Assyria. And there they would be tortured, killed, sold as slaves. And so that's the kind of thing that was going on during this day. I mean, that's not to take away with some of the stuff that's happening today, but that's some pretty bad stuff. So that's just kind of the historical climate that I want to set things up with for what we're talking about here with Jonah. Now, here's the part that I need you to help me out with. We talked about two parts. God is our cornerstone, or God as a stone of stumbling. So as we're going to go through different parts of this story, and I want you to help me identify: is God a cornerstone during this part, or is he really being looked on kind of as a stone of stumbling based on what's happening? So let's go back a slide, because I have things out of order here. I'll go ahead and read this, and we'll make a decision. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai, saying, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, and he found a ship that was going to Tarshish, paid the fare, and went down into it to go with him to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Do you think this is cornerstone material, or do you think we're setting up kind of a stone of stumbling here? You can actually speak out loud, it's okay. Yeah, I'd go with stone of stumbling on this one. But look what he's running away from. I mean, what does it say that he's running away from?
Away from God.
He's running away from the presence of the Lord. I mean, Psalm 139 comes to mind. Where can I go from your presence? Well, Tarshish isn't it. Sorry. There's nowhere where you can go away from the presence of the Lord. So let's keep going here. Now, if we check this out, I just wanted to show you what kind of a detour Jonah was really going to make here. Joppa is where they launched off from. The Gath Hefer there, that's his hometown. So he traveled down to Joppa. Tarshish is about 2,200 miles. That's Spain over there. Modern day Spain is where he was headed to. Talk about away from the presence of the Lord. He was away from the presence of about everything. But God wanted him to go to Nineveh. That's like, 600 miles up the road. But he took off on his own little journey. And when we get to this little arrow part, the second little arrow right there, not far off, something happens. Let's go on and see what that's all about. So Jonah tells the story, hey, I'm on this boat, I'm running away from the presence of the Lord. And they became extremely frightened. They said to him, how could you do this? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. Can you imagine that? You fool. I mean, fleeing from the presence of the Lord? Come on. So they said to him, what should we do to you that the sea may become calm? Because at this point, we skipped some verses, but there came up a big storm. For the sea was becoming increasingly stormy. And he said to them, pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you. For I know that on account of me, this great storm has come upon you. All right. Cornerstone, stone of stumbling.
Cornerstone.
Stone of stumbling, yeah. I mean, for Jonah right here, Not so great. But the weird thing is he knows what to do.
Well, but you don't know a whale is going to come and get him.
Not yet. We're not there.
Is he choosing like death over the presence of God?
I think so. I think at this point he's just like, throw me overboard because that's going to calm the storm. How did he know it was going to calm the storm? I don't know. But somehow through his relationship with God, he knew that it would calm things down because he knew that was the cause of things. So things are just getting worse and worse. Let's keep going. So they picked Jonah up, threw him into the sea, and the sea stopped its raging. Now check this out. Then the men feared the Lord greatly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. So for the people on the boat, what did God become? Oh my gosh, big time. So here we can see that even though sometimes we make, and just like Jonah, make dumb choices, God uses it for his glory. Now that does not give us license to say, guess what? I'm going to make a choice because I want to make it. God's going to use it for his glory. And, he causes all things to work together for good. I'm covered by that one. So, bam, I'm going to do this. No, I really don't think that's the way it works. But for these guys, it inspired the fear of the Lord when the storm calmed down. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord right on the boat. Now sacrifice, if we think about that, a sacrifice is usually like where they kill animals and make vows. I bet they made some vows to the Lord. They made the vows to somebody. So they're making a sacrifice on the boat. These guys are hardcore worshiping God right now because they are really blessed that the storm has relented. So even in the midst of all this mess, some amazing stuff of the Lord happens. Let's keep going. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah was in the stomach of the fish for 3 days and nights. The Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land. Stumbling or cornerstone? Gosh. So let's hear it. For cornerstone people, why did you say cornerstone? I'm not saying there's right or wrong. I just am interested. Okay, because it was delivered. For those people who said stone of stumbling, why did you go there?
Wants to be in the middle of the pond.
I'm sorry, that could be like, God, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, consequences.
And he didn't know how it was to be in there.
And he didn't know it was going to happen at all. So this can kind of go both ways. I can see both sides. I'm really not one that wants to be covered in vomit a whole lot, but yet he was saved. The Lord was faithful and saved him. So maybe a mixed bag. Maybe we'll call a draw on that one. So let's continue on. This is important stuff. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it the proclamation that I'm going to give you. Man, the Lord is so gracious. Gives him a second chance. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, a 3 days walk. That doesn't mean it's 3 days to get to Nineveh. That means to walk through the city of Nineveh takes 3 entire days. It's that big of a city. Then Jonah began to go through the city 1 day's walk, and he cried out and said, "Yet 40 days and Nineveh will be overthrown." Then the people of Nineveh believed God, and they called a fast and put on sackcloth from the greatest to the least. Stone of stumbling or cornerstone? Cornerstone, man. Amazing. Jonah finally gets it through his thick head that he needs to do what God says, and God just delivers the city. Think about what we talk about, what they do in this city. This is the fishhook city. This is the place where they're leading people around, and then they're torturing them, or they're killing them, or they're selling them into slavery. This is a nasty place. This is an exceedingly horrible place. But God brings deliverance because they put on sackcloth and they repented before the Lord. What a great thing. It's so good that we put it on there again. Amazing. I think we read that one. Let's go on. Then the people of Nineveh believed in God, and they called a fast, and they put on sackcloth from the greatest to the least. And when God saw their deeds, that they turned from their wicked way, then God relented concerning the calamity which he had declared he would bring upon them, and he didn't do it. Cornerstone, stone of stumbling. Cornerstone, all day long. Exactly right. Yes, God relents. Oh, now check this out. But it greatly displeased Jonah, and he became angry. Then Jonah went out from the city and sat east of it. And there he made a shelter for himself and sat under it in the shade until he could see what would happen in the city. Now, come on. You've been in the belly of the whale. You know, things have not gone well for you. You finally believe the Lord, and then you're ticked off because they follow the Lord. I mean, he obviously has a problem with his city because he goes out and he sits to watch the city. So you can imagine what that looks like. Sundial, okay. Watching the city. I mean, what's he watching for? He's waiting for destruction. Is destruction going to come? Absolutely not. Because God's already delivered them. I mean, this guy is delusional. He is messed up in the head if he thinks that anything but deliverance is going to happen. I mean, maybe, what he's probably seeing is, he's probably hearing the cries of the people for their sin. He's probably seeing, people in sackcloth and ashes all through this huge city, bowing down before the Lord. So what is God for Jonah right now? A cornerstone or a stone of stumbling? Yeah, stone of stumbling. Jonah's not getting it. He is just not getting it. Let's go on. So the Lord God appointed a plant, and it grew up over Jonah to be a shade over his head to deliver him from his discomfort. And Jonah was extremely happy about the plant. But God appointed a worm. When dawn came the next day, and it attacked the plant, and it withered. When the sun came up, God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head, so that he became faint, and begged with all his soul to die, saying, "Death is better to me than life." Oh, come on. He's hot. God performed a miracle. God's miracle grow. Puts this plant over him to give him shade. He's happy because he's so selfish. Then it dies, and then he's ticked off to the point of wanting to die. Cornerstone, stone of stumbling. Yes, stone of stumbling in his life. Okay, let's remember. What's Jonah's office? What's his title? Prophet. This isn't just Joe Israelite. This is like somebody who has an esteemed position before the Lord, acting like this. Now, I know that our leaders in modern day times who follow the Lord certainly don't act like this. I mean, they're all above reproach. Let's move on. So, then God said to Jonah, "Do you have good reason to be angry about the plant?" And he said, "I have good reason to be angry, even to death." Then the Lord said, "You have compassion on the plant, for which you did not work, and which you did not cause to grow, which came up overnight and perished overnight. So should I not have compassion on Nineveh, the great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who did not know the difference between their right hand and their left hand, as well as many animals?" For Jonah, cornerstone, stone of stumbling. He's not getting it. He is just not getting it. I mean, here he's having a direct conversation with God about this. And he can't even see what's happened. I think, let's see, what's next? Back up. All right. So, I mean, here we see that, some would say, well, Jonah was yielded because he did what the Lord said. but he was yielded under protest. Kind of like Stella and the chicken. She had to be disciplined twice before she ate the chicken. She wasn't yielded. She was yielded under protest. The Lord doesn't want us in a place yielded under protest. I mean, he'll take it. I mean, when we're young Christians, when we're growing in the faith, I mean, that happens, you know. We yield under protest sometimes. God, I don't want to do this. I know you want me to do this, and all right, I'll do it this one time. That's it. Forget about it. Yielded under protest. And that time, God kind of becomes a stone of stumbling. So, we're going to make this a little more now, a little more personal, a little more for today. And so I'm going to put you guys to work a little bit. Christine's helped me out so nicely with a couple of things here. And I'm going to have her help me again. Thank you, ma'am. So I've got some charts here, and we're going to put these on the table, and they say a couple of things. They say, we are aligned with God's vision and plans for change. This would be kind of like Cornerstone. Or it could say, oh wow, you really did get that. Good job. We are not aligned with God's vision and plans for change. Now you'll notice there's some tables. I'm going to have you put one of each of these on each side. So one of these is a yes table, one of these is a no table. One of these is a cornerstone table, one of these is a stone of stumbling, stone of stumbling. Make sense? Great. She's going to put those out there. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on this together and figure out what this could really look like in our lives today. Nope, one on each table. So one there, one there. So an aligned one there, a not aligned one down there. Oh, okay. I'm just up in your business, aren't I? All right, I'll shut up now. Okay, so as we're looking at this, and we're talking about change, and we're talking about, vision that the Lord has for our lives, those things can happen just like they happened to Jonah. We spent a lot of time on Jonah. But the reason we want to spend a lot of time on Jonah is because I wanted us to see that throughout his life, God could be both. God could be a cornerstone. God could be a stone of stumbling. Even to somebody who apparently walked with God pretty close, who apparently heard his voice very clearly, to the point that it was faultless, because that's what prophets were back in the Old Testament. So if that could happen back in Jonah's day, that can certainly happen in our lives. And so I want us to take some time, and we're going to consider this, and we're going to consider it in the context of the different effects it could have. We are aligned with God's vision and purpose for change. So here are the things we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about what are the effects if we're really aligned on these different areas. What would the effect be on our personal lives? What would the effect be on our relationships? People we influence, circumstances, relationship with God, the ability to see and hear from God on our local body and the body of Christ. Now, I know there's a lot